So now we're at the very last part 7 of our series on Algebra 2 loose ends for solving quadratics. We have gone through 1 through 6, and now we're moving to operations with complex numbers. So let's jump to there. And we're going to look at addition, subtraction, and multiplication. So the thing to keep in mind is that when you're adding and subtracting and multiplying with complex numbers, it's really just the same as adding and subtracting and multiplying with variables. You know that I is not a variable. I is defined as the square root of -1. So we have to treat it a little bit differently when we think of it as a number, because it is a number, but it operates just like a variable for the most part. So let's look at a couple of these examples, especially with adding and subtracting. So let's look at this first example. We're just going to add and subtract just as if that I were an x. So 3 plus 2i, think of it as 3 plus 2x, plus 7 minus 5i. So we're just going to distribute that positive sign, and that's going to give us, combining like terms, we get 10, and then we combine the 2 and the negative 5i to get negative 3i. So that's our solution there. Then if we go straight down to do an example problem for subtraction, we're going to distribute that -1. And that's going to give us 7 plus 3i minus 2 plus i. And then we combine our like terms. 7 minus 2 is 5, and 3i plus I is 4i. So our combined answer, our difference or sum, is 5 plus 4i. Then we're going to move over to the next two, where you have a little bit of distributing to do in addition to the combining. So 4 plus 2i, we're bringing that straight down. And we're going to distribute that 2. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times negative 3i is negative 6i. And then combining like terms, we get 18. And then 2i minus 6i is minus 4i. So that's our final sum there, is 18 minus 4i. Then if we move to the next one, we're subtracting. So we're going to distribute that negative 3. 5 minus 2i, and then negative 3 minus 2 is negative 6, and then negative 3 times negative 4i is going to give us plus 12i. Combine those like terms for -1 plus 10i, and that's our solution there. Now moving over to multiplying. So most of the time when you multiply with binomials, you do either one of two things. You double distribute, or you use the area model. So we're going to go ahead and use the area model. What we need to remember, though, is that if I is defined as the square root of -1, then I squared is defined as -1. And that's a really important feature, a really important thing to keep in mind here. So when we multiply, we're going to take 3 plus 4i and multiply it using the area model method by 6 minus 5i. Complete that area. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4i is 24i. Then you multiply the rows and columns on the bottom and look for your like terms. So we've got negative 15i plus 24i. Those combine to give us positive 9i. So our product is 18 plus 9i minus 20i squared. But remember, I squared is equal to -1. So we're going to go in and replace that I squared with a -1 right there. And then that ends up making that negative 20i squared, it turns it into a plus 20. So then we end up with 18 plus 20, those two like terms, which is 38, and then plus 9i. So that's your product with those two complex numbers. Then here, we're going to double distribute this one instead of doing the area model, just so you can see both methods. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 3i is 15i. Negative 2i times 7, and negative 2i times 3i. So we have 35 plus 15i minus 14i minus 6i squared. Combine those two like terms in the middle. So we get 34 plus 1i squared plus 1i minus 6i squared. But then remember, I squared is -1. So then we combine 36 plus 6, which gives us 42 plus I. And that's our final solution there. So that's a little bit about operations with complex numbers. And that rounds out our review of all things quadratic for loose ends algebra 2.